Hello, it is Reese here, and today I want to talk about tips for presenting, be that at a conference, be that as part of an assessment, how you can sort of set yourself up well, and what to do when you're in the session, and how to respond when you have questions that you need address. So why is presenting such an issue? It is, I think we find often the least favourite assessment type of students, and it's something that even when you get to sort of a senior level, when you're a postgrad or a staff or a full lecturer, it's something that people don't overly love doing. And why do people not love doing it? Because it's inherently a performance, and it can be quite awkward to stand in front of many people and to talk to them as an expert, to talk to them about something. And the sort of act of doing it is sort of a challenge, and of course inherently so. And what I would say, and the reason I've made this particular video, and it's kind of really hard to teach someone how to present, but presenting is a skill that can be learned in the same way that essay writing can be learned, in the same way that doing a literature review or referencing can be learned. It's a different challenge, it's a different skill set, but it's something that can really be learned. So what I want to do is offer some tips on how you can prepare, how you can set yourself up well to do it, with the hope that sort of this will ease some concerns about something that a lot of people find scary, because it is a little bit scary, but it's, I think, less scary than it may initially seem to be. So the first key thing I've put here, and this is sort of part of an advanced prep that goes in before you present, is kind of knowing the basics. So sort of what are you presenting? Where are you doing it? To whom are you presenting? And it's very handy, and this is true of if you're doing it for an assessment, as with all types of assessment, and if you're doing it in a professional capacity, to kind of have a sense of who your audience is and what you're expected to present to them. Is this an assignment that is asking for a specific piece of work? Are you meant to sort of demonstrate a particular piece of knowledge? Is it a research paper? Are you presenting your own work? Are you sort of trying to summarise something you're aware of? Are you reporting on what's happened? Who is your audience going to be? So it's not often the case that you'll know specifically. It may be the case, say it's an assessment, you know exactly who you're talking to. If you're at a conference, it may be the case that you sort of know who your audience is roughly, people interested in a certain topic, for example. Or if you're doing it in a professional capacity, you may be presented to a committee or whatever. So sort of knowing who that audience is and figuring out what they need to know, what you want to talk to them about. And the organisation aspects of it. So sort of figuring out how to sort of make it interesting. And that often depends on what type of presentation it is, but kind of there's a challenge, an inherent challenge in presenting, of sort of how you keep the audience on board, how you bring them along, how you make them engaged in what you're talking about. And there are ways to do this, there are multiple ways, and sort of it depends on what you're presenting, but often kind of it's the same kind of process as the sort of setting up of an essay or other academic pieces of writing. You're setting up a context, and you're talking about whatever is relevant within that context, and then you're concluding with a summary, you're concluding with a call to action, you're concluding with further questions. So having all these things in mind as you prepare a presentation is incredibly useful. After this comes what I've called effective preparation. So this is multiple things. So this is preparing your notes. And I've talked about this in my previous video on conference presentations that I will link in the description down below. Are you someone who finds it quite easy to sort of read off a script? Do you sort of go verbatim? Do you like to have little detailed notes, little cue cards? Do you like a piece of paper or cue cards, or off a phone, for example? Having all those things in advance and sort of preparing it so it works best for you is incredibly useful. Alongside that, are you allowed, say, a PowerPoint presentation or a video? And do you have to prepare something in advance that your audience will see? All of these questions can really shape how you prepare a presentation, because if your audience is going to have stuff in advance, there may be points you don't need to hit because you're assuming they've already seen them. If you have visual aids during a presentation, you can present points in that format that you don't have to address in detail in the presentation. So sort of planning all of this and planning what you have to work with is incredibly useful. Then with that, I would say lots of practice. You may not always have the time to practice things 100 times. But if you have written a script, if you've written notes, just read it out. I find it's incredibly useful to sort of rehearse. It's something that I always do before every single presentation that I give, especially in conference settings, is to rehearse it. So I can test things like timing. How much time do I have? Have I sort of fit within that time? Do things make sense? Are there areas where I get bogged down? Areas where I think the flow is rubbish? The only real way to test that is to literally perform it. And so that is an incredibly useful thing. Just sit in your room or talk to someone if you sort of have someone you can talk to. Just a trial run of a presentation is something that I really, really recommend. And it helps so much. It helps with sort of confidence. It helps with knowing if the actual sort of content works, the written content, and it gives you a sense of time, and all those things are incredibly, incredibly useful. Body language. Body language is the thing that people really, really struggle with in presentations, especially if you're a nervous presenter. It is really, really hard to sort of perform for a room, and presenting is a performance. There are some things that are quite easy to do. If you're reading off a script, it's easy to be looking down constantly and never looking up because you're reading, and it's more reassuring to be with that content. It is the case as well, perhaps. Sort of choose a single point to focus on, to not appear very open or confident, and to be sort of quiet or hesitant. There are lots of things to say, and these things I'm going to say are sort of easier said than done in many cases. But things that I think are really useful and which really go some way to making a difference. Looking around the room and looking at the audience members. So when I give a presentation, I sort of alternate between my notes, my content, and looking at different people in the audience to give a sense that I'm communicating to them. This can be difficult. Of course it can be difficult because you're sort of making eye contact with people who sort of have all eyes on you. But it shows that you're sort of engaging with the room, and it sort of goes a long way. Similarly, sort of being confident in terms of the voice. It may be or may not be the case that you have a microphone, but sort of trying to project to the room, no matter how big the room is. Having this sense of kind of confidence in your voice, in your material, in your own position as presenter. And little things like essentially just kind of owning a space. I think, I move around quite a lot when I present. I just find sort of being rooted in one spot to be quite restrictive. I like moving around. I use my hands in a way as I do if I'm talking to people. There's a knack, I would say, to being able to present in an effective way. And the tendency, if you're nervous or worried, is to be quite rigid in how you speak and how you move. So sort of trying to own a space and trying to be quite confident in your movement and your vocal delivery is kind of the key aspect of body language, I'd say. And here we go, the other key challenge for presenting is that it is often accompanied by further dialogue, by Q&As, in which people will then potentially interrogate you on the things that you have said. How do you prepare for this? There are ways, again, you can set yourself up for success. So you know the content, you know what you're going to flag. And you should vaguely know the area, right? So you are in a position to kind of effectively guess, to effectively assume what questions are likely to come up, and you can kind of prepare for them. That doesn't mean you're guaranteed to get those questions, but you have a sense, you sort of have scope to be able to sort of position yourself to respond to things that you think are likely to appear. Similarly, you can use your platform, depending on what it is, to raise questions or to raise points that sort of are worthy of discussion. if you're presenting, a committee paper, for example, it may be the case that you flag certain things that need discussion, so you can sort of essentially get ahead of the game. Then, let's assume these aren't the cases you're being confronted by questions. It may be an assessment, it may be a conference, it may be something else in this academic world. Normally, it's not the case that questions, they're not there to throw you. So if you're being assessed, if you're sort of presenting your work, the intention of questions normally is either A, for the person who's asking the question to learn more, or B, for them to sort of help you test or sort of further demonstrate your understanding. We do this a lot. I taught on a module last year, where the sort of end assessment was a presentation, and we would always ask sort of questions to sort of encourage the students to think about sort of the wider resonance of the things they'd done, and to think about sort of how they could expand their ideas. And it's a tough thing to be confronted with such a big question, perhaps, but it's very, very rare that you're going to get questions that are deliberately designed to trap you out. It's not me saying that there aren't people like that, because there definitely are, but that is normally not the vibe of questions in the academic sphere, I would say. And then lastly, sort of in conferences, in sort of presentations, you're very welcome to ask for stuff to be repeated and to be rephrased, and especially in the conference land, you're very welcome again to say that you don't know things. And there's this kind of pressure to sort of assuming you're the authority who knows every single thing. But no one knows every single thing, so engage in a dialogue. If you don't know an answer, sort of, ask more questions, speak to the person who's asked the question. There is sort of no inherent pressure to be able to know everything and to be able to answer every single question, especially as you're sort of often at the front without recourse to the references you have, without recourse to other materials. It's a challenge, it's a tough pressure, but you're allowed time to think, and you're allowed to say, I'm not sure. So this was my video with some thoughts and ideas on presenting. It's kind of a hard one to demonstrate in an online video, but hopefully this has been of some use. I know this is something that people don't love, and I think that's a shame. I think sort of if you can present, anyone, as I say, can learn it. The skills are quite easy in principle. It's just sort of having the practice and the confidence to run with them. And it's a shame to my mind that as we develop things like essay writing skills, and as we develop lab skills, as we develop whatever skills, and this is a skill that we don't often focus on as much, but it is so essential, that ability to present and to make human connections, to be able to engage an audience. So hopefully this has been useful. Some degree, and if there's further advice I can offer, please do comment below. I would love to help and to sort of make these videos that you guys want to see. If you have any excellent tips of your own, please do comment below and share them as well. I know people will be very, very appreciative. In the meantime, make sure to like, make sure to subscribe, ring the bell so you know when there's a new video. If you have any ideas for future videos you'd like to see in either the skills videos on the Monday, or in my sort of horror and film analysis content on a Thursday, please do let me know as well. Thank you so much for watching. I look forward to seeing you all in the next one.